Hello again, and welcome to the final installment so far of Hludzik Explains. I'm Chris Hludzik, and in the Hludzik Explains series I've been taking you through my solo releases and side projects in great detail, talking about the recording process, the songwriting process, inspiration for the songs, etc. I've covered all of my solo releases thus far, including my debut solo album, Yours in Rock, my sophomore solo album, Distance Means Harmony, and my third solo release, the Nervous No More EP. I've also talked about my side project with my good friend Brian Brophy, which is called The Latter Day, and the album that we made called As We Speak. Now I'm going to be discussing my second side project, a side project with my good friend Adam Kime, called Murder Under Trust. We released a self-titled EP in the end of 2014, and the roots of Murder Under Trust go back as far as the end of my recording sessions for my first solo album, Yours in Rock, back in early 2008. As I was wrapping up production on Yours in Rock, I had these little scraps of ideas for sort of darker material, and it didn't really fit in the Chris Hludzik vein. So I always kind of saw this stuff as being more of a side project material. And it was really just inspired by kind of grunge rock, goth rock, 80s kind of dark gothic rock, stuff like that. Early cult, death cult, groups like that. And I just thought it was something cool to do, a little different than what Chris Hludzik would normally do. But obviously it wasn't stuff that Chris Hludzik himself could release, so that's why it had to be a side project. I got the concept for the title, Murder Under Trust, basically from Scottish culture. Of course, if anybody's ever read or saw the Shakespeare play Macbeth, you'll know what I'm talking about. But murder under trust was considered an even more heinous crime than typical murder, because the victims had actually put their trust into their killers without knowing that they would be killed. So it was seen as a much more heinous crime. And I pictured the lyrical topics for these darker pieces that I came up with as being somewhat of a darker tone, and talking about kind of how society has kind of made us all kind of murderers under trust, or victims of murder under trust. And I just thought it sort of tied in nicely with the theme. But Murder Under Trust basically started as just a bunch of random ideas, random snippets. I would record these, minute-long or minute-and-a-half-long samples of riffs, lead guitar lines, guitar melodies, just little ideas, just kind of scraps of things, just to get something down recorded, so I'd have something to reference later on when I eventually did want to do the project. The stuff just kind of sat there for a while. I didn't really tell too many people about it, because I was working on my solo album, finishing it up, and I was helping other people work on their stuff, and I was playing shows, so that just sort of fell to the wayside. When I eventually did start looking at the stuff again, I talked with my good friend Adam Kime, and played him some of the stuff, and he thought it was really cool. And one day I had him come over to the house, and I played him this riff that I'd been working on, and it was just an instrumental thing. I didn't have lyrics for it, but I thought it would be cool as an instrumental. And it was just this really weird, almost dissonant chord that I kind of invented, I guess. I don't even know if it's an actual chord, but the song ended up being a song called War Cry on the EP that we released. It was just this really cool thing that we came up with. I found this really crazy, fast drum beat pattern on a guitar pedal that I had, and we just set it to that, and we played to that, and it sounded really cool and sounded really neat. But in parts I knew I wanted to have real drums on it, so I had Brian Brophy add real drums to certain parts of the song, and Adam did guitar solos, and I played all the other guitars, and the song came out really cool, and we were both happy with it. But again, I was busy doing other things, so I didn't really do anything with it at the time. It just sort of sat there. And every other time in the next couple of years that I would kind of revisit the Murder Under Trust stuff, the same thing would happen. I would get involved in other projects. I'd be starting to do a project of my own, so it just kind of got put to the back burner again. Not because I wanted to, that's just the way that it happened. And like I said, because the stuff was so different from anything that I had done myself, know if it had a place. I didn't really know what to do with it. And Adam and I would go back and forth over the years in both personal conversation and emails back and forth with each other about, we should do something with that murder under trust stuff, and it would be really cool. And one day we just decided we're going to stop talking about it and we're just going to do it. And Adam was the one who actually really got the ball rolling, because he took one of the song samples that I had sent him and he actually recorded it and fleshed it out as a whole song. And that was when I realized, okay, there's something here and we can work with this. So this is really cool. And basically that was what got it started. Obviously that instrumental track that we did, years prior was always going to be in contention, because that was the original thing that we did. But it was nice to be able to get some of that other material out and work on it and see that it had potential to be something. So the first song on the EP is called Mission Statement. And I had the lyrics for quite a while. And the guitar parts I came up with was this really sort of dissonant lead guitar line followed by this sort of grungy guitar riff. And it didn't really go anywhere, and I didn't really know if it could be fleshed out to like a full length, 3.5 or 4 minute song or whatever. But what Adam did was he didn't flesh it out to a 3.5 or 4 minute song. He made it about 1:40 song, and it worked perfectly as an intro, as a taste of things to come for the rest of the EP. And it wasn't too much, it was just enough. And it worked out brilliantly. I had an idea to do the lyrics as sort of a spoken word thing as opposed to singing them. And Adam went one step further and said, well, instead of speaking them, why don't you shout them? So you're still not singing them, so there's still technically a spoken word, but it's a shouted word actually. And it just added a sort of an edge, an extra layer to the lyrics, and really, really worked out well. The next song was called Lament, and that was a song that Adam wrote the lyrics for. And it's just basically a song about, seeing potential in someone that they either can't see or they just don't want to do anything to bring out, and you trying to kind of bring it out of them and say, why can't you see this great ability that you have, and why can't you just do anything with it? And just sort of, as the song says, lamenting that. The third song in the EP, of course, is War Cry, the instrumental, which was the thing that got this whole ball rolling, really, as far as the Murder Under Trust project went. And again, just a really different sounding thing, as far as, the guitar structure. It was very sort of an off-kilter kind of a thing. And considering that the stuff that I do myself wasn't very off-kilter, this was very different for me. Adam did a great guitar solo on that song, and I believe he did it in maybe 1 or maybe 2 takes. I remember we didn't waste a lot of time on it. And I remember him fretting over it, thinking it wasn't good enough, and I remember being there thinking it was awesome and telling him that he was nuts for thinking it wasn't good enough. The last 2 songs on the EP were individually written. The bulk of the EP was pretty much 50-50. Either I would write the lyrics or Adam would write the lyrics, and we would both write the music. But for these last 2 songs, they were individual efforts. The next song is called Hopeless Mercenaries, and that was my song. And that was actually the song where the project and the EP got its name, because there's a line at the end of the song that says, leave me a victim of murder under trust. And that was where the whole impetus for Murder Under Trust came from. And I'm very proud of that song. I really like it. Adam actually helped me come up with the title, because there is the word mercenaries in the song, and I wanted to use that in the title, and I thought, well, we can't just name it Mercenaries. That just sounds too simple and too throwaway, So I originally wanted to call it Helpless Mercenaries, but then Adam thought that sounded kind of too weak. And he said, well, mercenaries really aren't helpless, are they? They can, they can kill if they want to. They can defend themselves if they have to. So they're not really helpless. but they can be hopeless in that they're trapped in this position of being a mercenary, or being being kind of a slave to this thing. And even though they're getting paid for it, even though they're getting compensation for it, they're still kind of forced into this. And so hopeless mercenaries seemed like a really good fit. Just the song turned out really great. It's a really cool lyric, I think, and I'm not just saying that because I wrote it. I mean, it's just, again, this whole EP was kind of an experiment for me because I'd really never done anything like this before, and this was really, me letting go of a lot of my, inhibitions about songwriting, a lot of my preconceived notions about songwriting, and kind of just casting my fate to the wind with it. And again, a lot of it too was just Adam, and just putting a lot of my faith and trust into him, because he had kind of done a lot more, harder rock style music, and in his various collaborations with people and various things that he had done on his own. So he was kind of a little more in tune with this world than I was, but I was more or less intrigued by that world, and that's why I wanted to do a project like that. But Adam obviously had a little more experience with it. The last song on the album is called Dream Song, and that's completely an Adam Kime composition. And that was actually one of the first songs that Adam wrote that he brought to the project. And I remember really, really liking it. But the only problem I had with it was I thought he wanted to put too much stuff on it. There was just, he wanted all these layers of this, that, and the other thing on it. And I just couldn't see to it, because I just thought this song was so good. It was so dark, but yet so meaningful, and, really had a nice melody to it and a really good feeling. It was a dark song, but it wasn't so dark that you couldn't, see, the tragedy in it, and really get that feeling of sadness and emotion in it, And I just thought that if it was overproduced, you would lose that. And so we sort of came to kind of a 50-50 compromise. There's probably about 50% less synthesizers and stuff. But eventually, once it was all mixed right and everything, I kind of saw where he was going with it, and I understood it. But at the same time, it's not too over the top. And it's really a nice way to kind of end this EP, because it's a very hard, aggressive sounding EP. And to sort of end it on this kind of very soft, soothing note, even if it is a very dark, sad song, it was still a really good note to end it on. I particularly like my bass part on the song, because it's not too crazy. It's very melodic. It more or less follows the vocal line, which, there's really nothing wrong with that. I mean, if the vocal line is good, and if you can put some bottom end under the vocal line, and, give it that little oomph without overtaking it, then I always feel you're better off to do that, because I think a lot of bass players tend to want to get carried away and overplay things, and then some bass players will underplay things. And I always try to kind of find a happy medium where I can, if I can follow the vocal, or if I can just, if it's a more propulsive, energetic song, if I can just kind of go along with the rhythm and the beat and just help that along, whatever helps the song, that's what I feel is the best. So this EP clocks in at about 15 minutes long. It's 5 songs, and I'm very proud of it. We had talked about potentially making it a full-length album, because I did have a lot of other samples and scraps of ideas that I'm sure we could probably flesh out into songs, and I know that Adam did as well, but I think we felt with those 5 we were kind of pretty good, because we had, about half of it was 50-50, and then we had the last 2 songs, which, I wrote one and he wrote one, and it was just a really nice mix. We had, 4 songs with vocals, the instrumental was, smack in the middle of it. It was just very nicely balanced out, and I think if we added more songs, it would have been too much, and if we had any less, it wouldn't have been enough. So it was just a nice, a nice even amount of everything. And obviously, for this, just starting out as just germs of ideas that I had brewing in my head around the end of production of my first solo album all the way back in 2008, and for it to turn into an actual release was quite a proud moment for myself and for Adam. We released the EP on Bandcamp.com, and it's available to name your price. So if you want to throw a few coins our way, it would be greatly appreciated. If not, then you can just download it for free. This was just a release we did purely for the love of it, because it was something that we wanted to do for a while and finally just hunkered down and did it. And again, I'm very proud of it. I know Adam was very happy with it when we put it out. And if you're interested in hard rock, gothic rock, alternative rock, stuff that's a little darker, then I think you'll enjoy this release. If you're a fan of my stuff, and maybe this isn't sort of your cup of tea, I mean, there might still be something on here that you might be able to sink your teeth into a little bit. But with that being said, it's available on Bandcamp.com. Just type in Murder Under Trust, and you should be able to find it. And that concludes the Hludzik Explains series. As I said in the beginning of the video, this was the final video for now. The reason I say for now is because I don't know if there'll be any more releases coming forward in the future. If there are, then surely there will be more Hludzik Explains videos, but as of right now, I have no releases planned. As always, I'm working on things, but I don't want to be the boy who cried wolf and say that I'm doing something and then I never do anything, or I don't do anything for a long time, and then I end up, looking like an idiot because I promised something that I didn't deliver on. So all I will say is, there's always, as I say in my song, Wrote That One Too, a tune in my head and a song in my heart. So for those of you who are fans of my work, don't give up hope, because there may be some new stuff along the way. When, I don't know. But until then, I've detailed all of my work in this series, so if you want to find out anything about it, if there's anything that you missed, you can go back and check it out. All my stuff is available various places online: YouTube, SoundCloud, Bandcamp. You can find pretty much everything I've done on the internet. So all you have to do is take a little look. And as always, if you come to one of my shows, I usually have a few copies of my releases on hand for very reasonable prices. So until next time, thank you very much for watching this series. Thank you very much for following me on YouTube, watching my videos. Thank you to those of you who have bought my releases and have come to see me perform live. It's always greatly appreciated. And until next time, I'm Chris Hludzik, and this has been Hludzik Explains. And I hope that you learned something. I hope you got some insight into my writing process and recording process and what I do. Like I said in the beginning of this series, I feel that's important to know where things come from and how things came to be. I always find it very interesting. I've always loved documentaries and behind the musics and things of that nature. I always want to learn more about bands and musicians, kind of get a feel for where they're coming from. And I think sometimes if you don't understand a band or a musician, you might not tend to like them. But if you understand them, you might like them a little bit more. So with that being said, I hope that now you understand where I'm coming from. And thank you again for watching, and until next time, I'm Chris Hludzik.